This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something, well, pretty huge. We're tracing what our source material calls the great artery of Western thought.
Yeah, it's this massive intellectual journey, basically how the whole idea of God is the foundation for knowing anything got, well, detached. Successfully detached, actually.
Right, it's the story of a power shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
We want to figure out how theology and philosophy went from this, master-servant setup.
Totally unquestioned initially.
Exactly, to a complete flip where philosophy takes the lead and then eventually they just part ways.
A full separation. So our mission today is to really track those steps, see how it all unfolded.
Okay, so let's unpack this. It's a centuries-long process we're looking at. Divine revelation starts out as the bedrock, the ultimate source of certainty, right? And then, slowly but surely, human reason steps in and displaces it. That feels like high stakes.
Oh, absolutely.
So where do we even begin to grasp the scale of this change? I think we need that starting point, that initial stable structure.
Definitely. We have to start where things were most integrated, which really means looking at Thomas Aquinas back in the 13th century. He didn't just, list things out. He constructed this whole fortress of certainty. It really defined Western thinking for ages.
Okay, Aquinas. He sets up this definitive, orderly structure. If you're trying to picture this, what did that hierarchy actually look like? The chain of command, so to speak.
It was super organized,
Yeah.
Very vertical. Theology was right at the peak. That's where you found absolute truth revealed by God.
Okay.
Then underneath theology, you had philosophy that dealt with truths you could figure out using natural reason. And then below that were the specific sciences, the empirical stuff.
Theology, philosophy, sciences, got it.
Exactly that order.
I want to zero in on philosophy there, in the middle. In Aquinas' system, it's not really finding truth on its own terms, is it? The sources call it the Handmaiden to theology.
That's the key term, yeah.
Handmaiden. It sounds kind of protective, maybe, but also really limiting. What was philosophy actually allowed to do? And where were those hard boundaries set by Aquinas?
Well, the boundary was absolutely crucial. Philosophy's job, its only acceptable role, was basically to back up and clarify the truths that came from faith.
Okay.
Think of it like theology is the architect with the divine blueprints. Philosophy is the construction crew.
Ah, I see.
It could use the best tools, logic, Aristotle, whatever, to build a solid structure. But it could never question the architect's design, the foundation itself, which was revelation.
So philosophy could ask how things worked in the world using reason, but it couldn't ask why in a way that might challenge scripture or reveal truth.
Precisely. That sets the baseline for us. Philosophy is subservient. Its whole identity is tied to serving this higher master.
Right. And this theology-first system was just the way things were, the status quo.
That was the unified field, yeah.
Yeah.
And everything that came after involved chipping away at that unity piece by piece.
So if Aquinas built this unified field, who started making the first, let's say, noticeable cracks in it, our sources point pretty quickly from Occam to Descartes as the key figures in that initial shakeup.
Well, the shift really gets going with thinkers like William of Occam. He argued something quite radical for the time. That God's will was so free, so absolute, that human reason just couldn't pin it down or constrain it. In a way, that was like a philosophical bomb. It drove a wedge between the truths of faith and the truths of reason, the very things Aquinas had tried so hard to weave together.
Okay, so Occam creates some separation. Then along comes Descartes, and he offers a completely different starting point for certainty, one that doesn't need theology up front at all. That feels like a major pivot.
Oh, it was huge. Descartes flipped the script. He shifted the foundation of certainty away from God, that external revealed truth, towards an internal subjective truth, the thinking self.
The famous, I think, therefore I am.
Cogito, ergo sum.
Exactly.
His starting point wasn't, God exists so I can know things. It was, wait, I'm thinking right now, so I must exist.
Okay, this is where it gets really crucial, I think. How does putting the thinking I at the center start paving the way for philosophy to eventually take over?
Well, by making the certainty of the thinking subject the first principle, Descartes essentially created a knowledge source that grounded itself. It didn't need external validation from theology anymore.
Right.
And this wasn't just, a personal realization for him. It gave science a method to operate autonomously. If physics or math relies on clear and distinct ideas found through reason,
then they don't need a priest to sign off on their findings.
Exactly. Science didn't need theological pre-approval anymore. They could stand on their own 2 feet, methodologically speaking, And that was a massive first step in destabilizing that whole Aquinian hierarchy.
So, the Handmaiden gets this new rational toolkit powered by the cogito, and suddenly she can, like, walk out the door on her own. But we're not at the full reversal yet, are we? We've just got autonomy.
Correct. Autonomy is step one. For the full reversal, philosophy had to show it could not only stand alone, but that it could actually organize knowledge better than theology ever did. And that takes us to the real turning point.
Which our sources say is Immanuel Kant. He's called the critical node of reversal. Sounds like he didn't just nudge things along, he kind of tore down the old structure and built something entirely new.
That's a good way to put it. Kant's work really cemented philosophy's place as the foundational discipline. He did two huge things at once. First, he secured the sciences
How so?
by defining the limits of what humans can actually know. He argued we can only have certain knowledge of the phenomenal world, the world as it appears to us, filtered through our senses and structured by our mind's categories.
Okay, so science is safe. It deals with appearances, experiences within the bounds of human reason. It doesn't need to worry about theological claims about ultimate reality interfering.
Right. Science gets its own protected territory. But then, what did he do with the old master, theology? Did he just kick religion out?
Yeah, what happens to God in Kant's system?
This is the absolute genius, or maybe the critical maneuver, of the whole reversal. Kant didn't just dismiss religious ideas where God, freedom, immortality. He replaced them. He basically moved theology inside philosophy.
Inside philosophy, how does that work?
He argued they function as requirements of practical reason.
Okay, requirements of practical reason. That sounds technical, but really important here. What does it mean for God's status?
It means you can't prove God exists using pure scientific-style reason. Those old metaphysical arguments, Kant showed they don't hold up. However, he says, if we want morality and human freedom to actually mean something, which, we kind of need for a functioning society,
Right, for ethics.
then practical reason itself demands that we operate as if God exists. And as if we have immortal souls. We have to postulate them to make sense of our moral lives.
Wow, okay, wait. So the necessity of believing in God isn't coming from divine revelation telling philosophy what's true anymore.
Yep.
Instead, the necessity of God comes from human reason itself, because reason needs God to make its own moral framework coherent.
You've got it. Philosophy now basically contains the religious element. It's become a functional component needed for philosophy's own highest purpose, which, for Kant, was establishing a rational basis for morality.
The servant has effectively swallowed the master.
Pretty much. Philosophy demonstrated it's the ultimate ground floor, capable of deciding where religious belief fits and what role it plays. This is the moment that reversal really becomes undeniable.
So once Kant showed philosophy could sort of absorb and reposition religion, wow, things really sped up, didn't they? The German idealists jumped right on that.
Oh, incredibly fast. Once the intellectual world kind of accepted that human reason sets the terms for faith, the takeover just gained momentum. You quickly get Fichte and Schelling. They thought Kant was actually a bit too timid.
Right. They pushed reason even further.
Yeah, they took Kant's reason, which was still somewhat tied to the individual's mind, and elevated it. They started talking about reason with a capital R, or the absolute, as this universal self-creating principle. It fully took over the role God used to play as the source of everything.
So it's not Descartes' personal, I think, anymore. It's this grand cosmic reason.
Exactly. They essentially gave philosophy's main concept reason total metaphysical supremacy. And in their systems, religious ideas weren't even a requirement anymore, like in Kant. They became just a moment, like a stage in the absolute's own process of self-discovery. Philosophy became this all-encompassing force.
And this whole trajectory, this ascent of philosophy, it culminates with Hegel, doesn't it?
Hegel is the peak. He basically drew the map for the New World Order, intellectually speaking. He set up a new hierarchy, and it's the mirror image of Aquinas's.
So what's the Hegelian order?
In Hegel's system, philosophy encompasses, the German term is Yolusetsu. It sort of means subsumes or contains within it, encompasses theology. And philosophy stands right at the very top. The new structure is philosophy, theology, sciences.
Wow, a complete inversion.
Totally. Philosophy is now the ultimate system. It defines and interprets everything: history, spirit, nature. The old theological foundation. It's rendered obsolete by philosophy itself. The Handmaiden is now the absolute monarch, setting the rules for everyone else.
It's more than just a title change, then. It's a fundamental shift in method. For Aquinas, revelation was the boundary. For Hegel, Reason draws the boundaries, fills in the content, and even dictates how to interpret revelation itself.
Precisely. Reason becomes the measure of all things, including religion.
Okay, so we've seen the servant rise up and become the master. But there's one more step, isn't there? The final act isn't just taking charge, it's saying the old master doesn't even need to be in the picture anymore.
Right, and that brings us to the final departure, the final act, really kicked off by Nietzsche.
The famous line, God is dead, often thrown around, often misunderstood.
Yeah, and in the context of this whole centuries-long intellectual drama we've been tracing, that phrase means something very specific. It's not just, a statement of personal atheism.
It's more philosophical than that.
It's the declaration that the theological premise itself, that absolute external foundation that had anchored Western thought for over 1,000 years, has been effectively dismantled, philosophically killed off by the very thinkers we've just been talking about, from Descartes through Kant to Hegel.
It was kind of the inevitable conclusion of philosophy winning that battle.
You could say that. If Hegel made philosophy the master over theology, Nietzsche just announced the ultimate consequence. You don't need the divine as a grounding premise for a thought anymore. The foundation's gone.
And the result?
The result is basically the entire subsequent history of modern and postmodern thought, which operates, for the most part, without feeling any need for a theological prerequisite. That theological ground, successfully detached, done.
So that whole massive arc, Aquinas starts with God absolutely supreme. Kant hits the turning point, tucking religion inside reason.
Right.
Hegel puts philosophy firmly on top.
The new monarch.
And Nietzsche basically announces the old foundation is now vacant.
That's the trajectory. It's the story of Western philosophy declaring, essentially, intellectual independence. Humanity, through philosophy, grabbing the reins of its own certainty, its own foundation.
What an absolutely incredible, centuries-spanning intellectual revolution, just thinking about that path again. Aquinas has philosophy basically working for theology.
The Handmaiden.
Descartes gives her the tools, the cogito, to think for herself.
Autonomy begins.
Kant redraws the whole map, shows philosophy can actually contain and define religion's place.
The critical reversal point.
Hegel elevates philosophy to the absolute summit.
The peak of philosophical dominance.
And then Nietzsche comes along and basically says, okay, the original master, not relevant anymore.
Yeah, it's a remarkable journey, the sheer resilience of philosophy in this. Using the tools of reason, which were first honed in service to faith, to eventually establish itself as the new self-sufficient ground for knowledge.
So this whole process of substitution philosophy, replacing the divine as the ultimate foundation, especially in that Hegelian sense, it leaves us with a really interesting question, maybe something for you, the listener, to chew on. If philosophy isn't the handmaiden to theology anymore, well, who or what does philosophy serve now? In this post-Nietzschean world, does it serve anything at all? Or just itself?
That's the profound question, isn't it? When you remove that ultimate objective external foundation, the whole burden of grounding, knowledge, values, everything, it shifts entirely onto human reason, human choices, human values.
That's the weight, the philosophical burden we've inherited from this whole dramatic story.
That certainly is.
Well, keep exploring those implications, thinking about what it means for thought to operate without that old theological safety net. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.